Okay, in this video, we're going to look at simplifying fractions. So before we get started, we're just going to look at a couple of the things that you should be able to do before simplifying fractions, or things that are going to make your life a lot easier if you already know how to do them. So first off, you should have a good knowledge of your times tables, and we've been doing those loads in class, so hopefully you're all really good with your times tables. The second thing is you need to be able to find common factors of two numbers, and again, that's something that we did in our last unit, so hopefully you remember that. And it's also quite helpful if you can divide numbers in your head, and you don't have to be able to do this, but it'll make your work a lot quicker. Okay, let's move on. So when we simplify fractions, what we're doing is we're finding an equivalent fraction to the one we've been given, but we want it in its lowest terms. Okay? And what I mean by that is that if you have a fraction in lowest terms, that means the numerator and the denominator don't have any common factors, okay? So let's look at how that would work with this first example here, 56 over 72. Now, what you want to find is something that will divide evenly for a common factor of 56 and 72. And a really easy one to spot is 2, because they're both even numbers, so you can divide them both by 2. So if I do 56 divided by 2, that's 28. And 72 divided by 2 is 36. Now, that's simplified, but is it in its simplest form, or is it in its lowest term? Let's see. Can I divide the top and the bottom by anything? Let's see. Yeah, they're both even, so I could just divide by 2 again. Okay, so 28 divided by 2 is going to be 14. And 36 divided by 2 is 18. Now let's check again. Is there something that can go into both 14 and 18? Well, yes, 2 can go in again. So I can divide them both by 2 again to get 7 over 9. Now, is there anything that goes into both 7 and 9? So there isn't anything except for 1 that goes into both 7 and 9. And if I divide the top and the bottom by 1, I just end up with 7 over 9 again, so we don't need to use 1. Okay, so in simplest terms, or in lowest terms, 56 over 72 is 7/9, the fraction 7/9. Now that was quite a few steps. We could have done it a lot quicker if we had looked for the greatest common factor of 56 and 72, and this is where it comes in handy to know your times tables, because if you look at those right away, you can see that they're both in the 8 times tables. So if I immediately divided that top, by 8, so if I divided 56 by 8, I would get 7. And if I did the same thing to the denominator, if I divided them both by 8, if I divided the denominator by 8, I would get 9. So right away I could have got to my answer, 7 over 9. Okay, but it doesn't matter. Whichever way works for you, you can do. So 56 over 72, that's the fraction 7/9. Now, one reason we do this is because it's quite difficult to visualize the fraction 56 over 72. If you're trying to think of something cut into 72 pieces and 56 of those are shaded, it's quite difficult to imagine, and so it's hard to know what size that fraction is. But when we have our fraction in lowest terms, 7/9, that's a lot easier to think about and a lot easier to visualize. Okay, and in lots of questions, they'll ask you to give your answer in lowest terms. So you always need to simplify your fractions when you're answering any kind of question. Okay, let's look at our second example here, 45 over 99. So is there a number that divides evenly into both 45 and 99? And hopefully you can see that 9 goes into both of those. So I'm going to divide the top and the bottom by 9 to get 5 over 11. Now, is there anything that goes into both 5 and 11? No, there isn't. They're both prime, which isn't always going to happen, but in this case they're both prime, so they don't have any common factors except for 1. Okay, so we're done with that one. Last one here, 360 over 480. That's quite a big one, but immediately you can see that they're both divisible by 10. Okay, so if I cross out those zeros there, that's showing that I'm dividing by 10. I'm left with 36 over 48. So I've already cancelled a little bit. Now, is there anything that goes into 36 and 48? Let's think about that. I can see 6 goes into both of those, so those are both in the 6 times tables. So 36 divided by 6 is 6, and 48 divided by 6 is 8. Now, is there anything that goes into both 6 and 8? Well, they're both even, so we would have to divide the top and the bottom by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. Now, is there anything that goes into both 3 and 4? No, there isn't. Okay, so 360 over 480, that simplifies all the way to 3/4. So that's the same proportion as 3/4. Okay, so the key to simplifying fractions is to divide the numerator and the denominator by the greatest common factor.